I am joined today by Tiffany, who has narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, the combination that I usually refer to as sovereignism.
Had a really bad argument one night about who was entitled to have the house if we all split up. I woke up the next morning and on my hour drive to work, I slowly fell into this paranoid episode and I started really seeing things in a distorted way. And that resulted in me figuring out a way to, in the space of a couple hours, figuring out a way to go underneath him and take the house out from under him when it came time. And I ended up being convinced of that he meant more he said some nasty things in that argument, but some of it you could tell was like proverbial or just like to demonstrate the strength of his feelings. And I took those the wrong way personally, and I ended up smearing his name publicly on multiple social medias. And it was once I got talked down and realized, no, this person is still my friend. At the time, I was just filled with this shattering regret. And what that really showed me is I was not managed as well, anywhere near as well as I had thought. It had shattered my perception of my
Hmm.
current shape, my current state, and realizing I could treat people like my father treated me way
Hmm.
more easily and freely than I thought, that I had become like him more than I had anticipated. Like I acted out on him in a way that I had in the past on my father as a defense mechanism. Often when he was doing the same thing to me to try to fight that fire with my fire. And so I was under the delusion that that wouldn't come out from anybody but my father. And in retrospect, that is was never true. I definitely
Hmm.
did that sort of thing to other people too. Maybe not quite to that extreme, but the same sort of thing. Just devastating.
No, big hug. But like something must have like given you the like strength or safety or something at that time to actually be able to confront it? Like, where did you draw like do you know where you drew the strength to be able to confront that part of yourself?
Riley helped me out of that self-pity episode one, but it felt like a mandate from heaven, like I had to f confront it. There's a lot of parts of my struggle that's kind of just how I treat myself. That I just feel like I have to.
Hmm.
I know I don't literally have to, but I feel compelled. And I
Yeah.
basically listed the reasons. I never thought I would actually like become like my parents. I was under the delusion that I hadn't,
Hmm.
or it wasn't as big of an issue as I had thought.
Yeah, a friend of mine also described the way that whenever she discovers that she has some traits of like her mother in particular, it feels like a punch in the gut for her. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I feel like I'd like lost the battle.
You lost which battle?
I was trying most of my adult life to not become like my parents, and it felt like I had failed at that.
No, yeah, but yeah, no. It's just a work in progress, I suppose.
Indeed.
Yeah, I've seen some YouTube comments from someone who said that like he's in his 80s, I think, and that he's like just woken up from like his bubble that he'd like lived all his life in, and now regrets wasting his life and like waking up from that in one's 20s. It's kind of really good in comparison. Like lots of life to enjoy outside the bubble.
Well, 30s, but yeah.
Okay.
She's definitely the like, not necessarily the seat, but the seed of my sadistic qualities. Like the thing she would say is, don't dish it out if you can't take it. But then that reinforced with how she treated me had the unconscious impression of, well, if I can dish it out, then I can do that. If I can take it, then I can dish it out. And that doesn't have much regard to whether that's a good idea or morally good or not.
Yeah, it also like dictates the framing, that the whole framing is about like some kind of aggression against one another, like the famous egocentric aggression that's associated with like sadism and sovereignism and malignant narcissism and such. I should probably like set the framing for it, and everything else can just like flow from that.
Yeah, I tried to resist it for a long time, which had goods and bads. Like it kept until my mom moved away when I was 15 and I was left with just my dad and they could no longer like kind of balance each other out. I maintained my values better, but I had poor impulse control over my aggression, specifically since I was disavowing it so strongly. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I was a little kid, I was diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder. I was expelled from kindergarten the first day.
Oh, what age was that?
5 years old. Yeah, I was expelled
Mm.
the first day. I did not get it through the I was not allowed back in that school. It was a private school. My mom tried to give me like a better life, a better education, and I ruined it day one.
Mm. Yeah, seems like yeah, the exact opposite of a good enough parent. Did you also like take on her expect like when she accused you of crocodile tears, did you like take that on, or were you like, no, that's bullshit and I have no way to prove it, but you knew that it's bullshit, or
Yeah, I knew it was bullshit and I had no way to prove it. It just like it taught me more the lesson of like my pain and suffering will garner
mm,
no respect or sympathy at all, and I have to get that support and care another way, perhaps
mm.
manipulatively.
Yeah, I suppose that's also the difference between, I know, maybe standard NPD or some other personality disorders, and probably something more sovereignism flavored that some people would probably like take this on and be like, oh, apparently I am evil. Apparently I am uh, so so bad and shameful and so manipulative, and then they would like try hard to like be a different person or something and feel bad about themselves and hide this part of themselves that doesn't actually exist, and like build up a lot of core shame around that, and like kind of, I don't know, you kind of knew who you are already to some extent. You just didn't have a way of existing.
Yeah, well, the way I internalized it was I guess I took it as more like I wasn't good enough at being the good kid, at behaving and controlling myself well enough, right?
Generally, when I see all of these different adaptations in people, I'm like, they're useful for some things. They're kind of mostly not useful in the given situation that the person is in, but like I want to in particular have the freedom to move between them as the situation requires and not be like locked into one particular pattern or to misinterpret the situation and then pick the wrong pattern.
I mean, isn't that like the core issue with it being a person, not the core reason it ends up this way, not the foundational reason, but the core issue of a personality disorder is that rigidity, right? Like if you don't have that rigidity, it's not a personality disorder. It's in the neurotic
Hmm.
realm. It's more situational. It's more from emotional reactivity. It doesn't necessarily go splash damage your entire life.
Yeah, like one friend of mine would be like the perfect soldier or something, or the perfect like spy or something of the sort. But like the country's not at war. There is no war. It's just like the
Yeah,
right
yeah.
adaptation for that environment.
But I'm still trying to flesh out what I want to do, how I want to embody my playfulness. Some of that comes out in just like socially carousing in the personas I deliberately project, very much more deliberate nowadays. Um, the outfits I pick, the kinds of things I try, the kinds of get-togethers I try to ha make happen. You know, it's pretty deliberately coordinated because I want to. One of the things I want there is I want to try to dare somebody to be their most themselves they can be.
Yes.
Um, and learn to dare to be and learn to dare themselves to be that. Like, when I give you my wisdom, that's genuinely what I hope. I hope that you internalize it not only as one individual way of looking at things, but as a whole attitude of seeing the ways that either like passive or active cruelty of, let's say, capitalism can, or social constructs can witness upon us to defy that as much as yourself for other people. Um, and a more abstract version of that is I meet a lot of queers that are, well, not even just queers. I meet a lot of people that are worried about taking those first social steps because they're worried about making the other person uncomfortable. And I'm like, that other person is also worried about being making you uncomfortable. You are both anxious about the exact same thing at once. And if you have that awareness, you can help that other person through that anxiousness and yourself at the same time and unlock that. More socially acceptable when you kind of just do it and you're not too weird about it. People are less worried, or they're like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "Oh, it's okay. I'm having fun." And they
Yeah.
realize you're somebody they can't contain. I've never
That's
said it like that. I've never said it like that. Somebody they can't contain.
I don't know. For me, it has like a bit of a histrionic flavor. Like there was this university commons outside, like some outside area. And now hundreds of students eating there. And I was looking for some folks, and I noticed there was a wall that started at a staircase. That staircase was going down, so I could just step onto the wall and then walk around on that wall. At some point, it was like 2 meters high. Walk around that wall, have like a good overview of everything, and could look for those friends of mine. And then I realized it's actually really cool to be like the only person in my like bright neon colored clothing who's like walking on this wall in between all of the people who are eating, and everyone looked up to me. I was wondering what I'm doing there. And
Oh
I
man,
loved it.
I get that feeling too when I do badass things a girl doesn't normally do. Either from my like strength or my skill, or even also just my like assertiveness and social confidence.
Yeah.
Um, that still feels more narcissistic to me most of the time. But there's also this like it's just this more mischievous part of me.
Yeah.
And I think this is a helpful time to like differentiate between the narcissistic and histrionic flavors. I guess like in a more histrionic flavored, I've limited myself from doing it in a more histrionically flavored and playful way by always tying it to my ego.
I remember that when I had this intense fear of like I don't know, like overstepping my status or something and then getting punished for that. I A thought that the probability was like 10% or so that I would get punished for it, and B thought that the punishment would be that I get expelled from society and die on the streets or something. And like in but like both of these things
Shame
come
is
together.
powerful.
Sorry?
Shame is powerful.
Yeah. And then I had like both. I dared more and more things over the past like year or a couple of years and learned that the probability that anything bad happens is like really low, hardly ever happened. But like I also learned, I think that was important, that if something bad happens, it can't harm me. Like I had this borderliner friend who actually like I don't know shamed me or attacked me for something that like was exactly my trigger, and then that turned out to be completely harmless. Like it actually happened, and I did not die on the streets. And so I think both of these like important that like you can learn to trust people again. You learn that you're not in this low trust environment anymore, that some people are trustworthy. But also B, that if someone does betray you, that you can survive that and that oftentimes nothing bad happens as a result. Is that, yeah, does that connect?
Yeah, and I think a lot of like what I said before, I think a lot of that is me just disavowing any feelings of fear, right? Because like I don't recognize it as that at first.
Mm. Yeah, exactly.
And so I can't negotiate with myself. Like I said, it gets shunted
Mm.
to
Anger.
anger or disgust or something or disappointment.
Mm.
And because that feels like that's something I can do something about it. And I'm trying to learn a framework that I'm not viewing everything as the way I handle it as control. Because like for instance, the way you handled that was not control. Control would have probably made things worse. Like one simple way I try to tell myself is just like it's not socially helpful for people to have a big issue with everything you do frequently, let alone all the time. It's not going to happen. And so from
Mm.
that, people will tend to be conciliatory or um or look for a solution. But I do still have some fear of social isolation from overwhelming people or harming them.
Mm.
And that comes back to my fear
Getting,
of not getting better, rather,
yeah.
not getting better enough. That some things just like have become either too innate or even just fearing that it's going to take forever. That like
Mm.
the experiences I need to learn the comfort and learn the strategies will take so long that oh oh yeah, I'll feel happy and safe in my 60s or 70s. That's totally worth it.
Mm. Yeah, no, like a friend of mine thought so. Rick, like the usual timeline is like 2 to 4 years, and a friend of mine even started her recovery in her 50s, well, 49 or so, I think, but basically 50s, and just like the NPD part, it's mostly, she mostly overcame within like 1 or 2 years or so, and then there was like a whole bunch of like particular CPTSD triggers that she needed to work on, and a bunch of other things, sort of a bit of a long tail, but I think after like 8 years or so, most of that stuff was overcome. So she kind of put it at 8 years, and I think there was even a gap in between, so she didn't even work on everything continuously.
My big thing, I know you have a question for this in there, but that I just want to be able to like hold down a job, have a space of my own, um, that sort of thing, and and then maintain some friends in the
Hmm.
meantime. And from my own past experience of being me, it and how difficult it was, how difficult it's been, it it makes it feel like it could take an incredibly long time to get to that point where like I have a hard time imagining holding down a job and a place of my own and a car that's not almost as old as me with over 200,000 miles, giving me expensive problems all the time. I have a hard time imagining that being true at the same time as a lot of other things not worked on much more thoroughly and deeply. And I imagine it has to be true, though, that I'll get to a point of financial and personal stability with still tons of work to do, but not, you know, um but
Mm.
it's hard for me to imagine what that looks like.
I think at some point you enter a bit of like a positive feedback loop where your environment becomes safe enough and stable enough that that's like giving you much more space and more stability. And then like you get also like more positive reward from making progress internally. Then there's this thing that as the emotions feel more listened to, more attended to, they become more manageable, and then people can't hurt you as much anymore either, because the emotions are so much more tame. And yeah, so I think at some point there's this like runaway positive feedback loop that just catapults someone onto the neurotic level.
I'm hoping I'm basically in that sort of situation.
Yeah, I was also wondering, like, in the context of the seven altars that you mentioned, you also mentioned to me at one point that you had the state where you were able to like dissociate from all altars at the same time, where you were basically in a no self state, identityless state, and I was curious what that felt like, whether you had like any kinds of preferences in that state, how you interpreted your perceptions, sense perceptions and such.
That was there for a couple of reasons. So normally when I'm in that state, it's been because I really form myself around the objective I'm after. So either I'm like so overwhelmed that I'd be like psychotic or um too dissociated already. I'm then like forcing myself to operate a certain way, or kind of the other way around where I realize there's one objective I need to achieve irrespective of what's going on with me. Well, so the first one I would be much more conscious about like what things I'm doing. I'd be very OCD about it, very OCD about like um all of my actions and goals and following through on them and still forming myself around those objectives. But a more extremified state, um that's probably actually more chaotic, but a more extremified state is like everything's going wrong and this one or these five things like the times I've had to move in an emergency and all sorts of things are going on around me and just whatever I have to do, whoever I have to be at work, whoever I have to be to the people that let me borrow this thing I need, um whatever I have to do to get myself up at the right time to do this, whatever I form around the objective. And then an even more narrowed version would be gray rage, because that's the objective for me, that is usually the objective of survive, right? And in all of those states, I'm trying to actively manage or completely suppress any and all of my impulses and reactions. I think that the first one, where I would just be really stressed and I would have to function even though I was heavily dissociated. That's the one that can still exist nowadays. I will I used to default towards that sort of hyper competence mindset. I think partly of like I didn't want to show anybody anything was going wrong. I didn't want to like have those feelings exposed and then have to freaking deal with them. I didn't in the other state, it's just I guess it's just like a different kind of I need to still function, right? It's like an emergency is happening, and I feel like there's emergencies going on inside me, and I do know better that I can do it. And I'm just like, I'm telling myself, nope, I just have to do these things. That was more of like being my own hero or being a hero to somebody to save the day sort of mindset. And I just feel when I've been in gray rage, when I come out of it, the best way I could describe what I was like in that state is just like a very sentient, caged animal. Um, like when I thought that somebody was going to try and commit me into a mental health ward, and then I did something worthy of that. I told her that if you even try, I'll fucking kill you right now. And whether I was bluffing or not, it took like half an hour before my adrenaline came back down and I realized like the fucking scar that could leave of just doing that. And I was just like, "Oh my God." And that person broke up with me the next day.
Mm, yeah. Mm.
That's interesting to note. I've seen people like they dissociate and then they can't do anything and I'm like, "Wow, you've had the grace, the fortune of your life to like when you can't dissociate, you get to not function. Good for you."
Uh, yeah, I think when people live their whole life in that state and don't know anything else, then identity is like a very fleeting thing that's just sort of briefly, I know, imprinted on them by another person.
Yeah, like it can for me, in the past, to some degree now too, but like it can just feel who the person expects me to be.
Yeah.
And that has been my way of understanding like connection and friendships and
Mm.
relationships. And it's very narrow. It's like it's not even like that information isn't prescient, that it isn't useful and relevant, but it's very narrow.
Yeah. It's basically like, I don't know, the line between like people pleasing and psychopathy is probably a bit blurry.
Blurry. Yeah. Yeah, because psychopathy leans you towards being agreeable so that you're always in a good state with the people that you want to be. And when you compromise when you're willing to compromise your values to keep certain things going, um, or apathetic about compromising your values, like not really considering it at all,
Mm,
um, you will do things that are people pleasing, but like, at least for me, yeah, since I'll interpret that as the obligations I have to the person or their expectations of me. I'll also only see them as seeing, um, I'll also only understand obligations from them and my expectations of them, and it'll really limit how much
mm,
of the depth of the person I can understand or experience. Um,
yeah.
and it is funny. It is funny that like somebody like that can then just like cut somebody off. Just go, you're gone. And that's that like porous zero trust
Yeah. Well,
thing, not having any sort of real intuition on how to navigate
mm,
any of that and having to intellectualize all of it.
mm. Yeah, it was like a weird experience for me when some like bosses of mine, let's say, who like they had some expectations on me and I delivered on those expectations. Okay, great. And then suddenly they had like a complicated interpersonal conflict and I tried to mediate between them. And I like literally had to like constantly, I heard them say something and I had to think, okay, how
Ugh.
would I feel about this if a friend of mine had told me that? Okay, how would I respond to a friend of mine? Let's say exactly those words. Because like it was like having this hierarchy differential and at the same time having to do friendship things was like very manual for me. You also mentioned like you just used the term, well, just I don't know, 10 minutes ago, the term operate to to describe how you like operated your body or something when you were how you operated yourself when you were in that state. Was that like a deliberate choice of a word? Because Emmy Thomas
Yeah,
observed that a lot of folks there are a lot of
yeah.
folks that she's interviewed have described themselves as operating themselves.
Yeah, like let's say a situation just like that, right? And I think my boss is upset with me, and I'm like, okay, whoops, I made a mistake. To what degree and what kind of um guilt or shame do I want to project? Okay, that kind. Now I know that kind. Um, let's let's act that out. Act out those actions and those feelings that I think that they're going to expect from me. Can make up a scenario in my head. I can do it. Um, let's say I my fucked up another expensive part. I'm like, I don't know how I did that. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just you know what? I don't do these big things that often, and I think I read the wrong part of these calipers again. Look, it's not going to happen again. I know it's happened more than once, but I didn't really understand why I was doing that before. And so in the middle of that, I'm thinking of like shifting from um showing care and shame and then going to like how am I being accountable and then transitioning that to confidence. And I don't know if that came across, but I am like playing back through my head something I had to do before.
Yeah, I sometimes notice like that my psychopathic friends kind of over apologize for some things and
Yeah,
you know, well, why? Why does this happen?
because we're totally unsure of how the trust is broken and what the fuck to do to restore it. And we're unsure of how honest we need to be. Because sometimes it's been like, it has been kind of negligence. And sometimes it's just showing weakness of just like, in that scenario, I was just stressed out and not sleeping right, etc. And just,
Mhm.
and nowadays it could be like, I'm sorry, I guess like I need another monster. I don't want to say like I'm falling asleep at the wheel, but don't worry, it won't happen again.
That is still super unintuitive for me. Like for most of my life, I thought that if I display any kind of confidence, people are going to knock me down for it, are going to attack me, humiliate me, because they don't want me to like usurp that status from them or something. And yeah, that doesn't seem to be like what's actually happening in the world. I don't know where I got that from.
No, no. Well, you're probably, over worried about their insecurity, and that can really depend, right? Like, if you acted confident about something on a car to me that I knew was wrong, I would both be like disappointed in you and insulted at the same time and get kind of insecure and angry out of like, how dare you? What? And I do mean you in particular, somebody else, somebody who isn't a gearhead or isn't a mechanic. Um, and I might, and there's totally people who will react like that, people with a more pathological form of narcissism. And so that happens, but that's that's certainly not the default either.
Hmm. Yeah, I think gradually warming up to that, like experiment with like some grandiosity and see what happens. And somehow I don't get knocked down. I don't know. It's surprising every time.
No, people think it's hot
Yeah, me
because
too.
they admire it. They wish they could be that. I was always confused. I'm just like, why don't you just do it then?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I had the same conversation. Like I'm also in one of the avoidant personality disorder groups, and basically, my take was like, in order to be self-confident, you just have to like allow yourself to be self-confident, and then dare to be self-confident. And the other person was like, no, like I would allow myself to be, I would dare to be self, but I'm not. And I was like, what does that mean?
Um, it's like I actually have like I've had to learn a more nuanced version of confidence because I didn't realize I was projecting it as like in like a teleological and a utilitarian way. I like did, but I didn't know why that was so narrow, why that was so myopic.
Hmm.
And I've learned that confidence is uncomfortable and confidence is a form of courage, your willingness to do something you're uncomfortable with. So people do still perceive that you're confident if you seem like unsure, but you do seem like you're determined to do it. This one YouTuber, Nile Red, a famous trope of how he does his chemistry experiments is he'll be like, I didn't think this was a good idea, but I did it anyway. Oh, so it was a bad idea. And that projects his pretty effortless confidence on his part, um, pretty irrespective of what's going on with him. Because ultimately it is the action of confidence that he's doing. He's confident in doing it in what he's doing and confident in following through and going, if that doesn't work, I will figure out something else. So it's a less shallow form of confidence.
Yeah, like I just watched a video where there were a few like physics majors, and they were asked a question, and one of them said, "Well, that's embarrassing. Like we're, I know, this and that semester physics majors, we should know that." And like that displayed simultaneously a kind of, yeah, I don't know, insecurity, but also confidence, because like she had no problem talking about that on camera
I
instead of
would
like
say that's the
pretending
confidence
to.
to be vulnerable, right? The
Mm,
confidence of knowing your own limitations and knowing
yeah,
what's probably expected of you. They're like telling you what you might already be thinking and going, but I'm okay with that uncomfortable thought, and this is how I am handling it, or taking that ownership of it.
yeah, exactly. Really admired that.
Yeah, when I see that stuff, I try to really learn from it more deeply than just emulate it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think for me, confidence has also meant like, well, I suppose if someone's just naturally fearless, then um, being courageous and facing fears and whatnot that come with confidence is just a lot easier. But for me, it's also been about like noticing that when things go wrong, they can't hurt me or not that much. It's kind of okay. I can recover from it. And then like the fear is lesser after that, and then it becomes easier to be confident. Yeah, like I don't know, not being afraid of humiliation is rather foreign to me.
Like, to me, it's like, why would I let somebody, I could maybe feel really bad that that happened or feel very afraid I'm going to lose them, but I'm like, why would I allow that person to have that power over me?
Hmm.
And I imagine that not allowing them to have that power over me is the only thing that's going to allow me to navigate it if it goes wrong.
Hmm. That
And
is.
that is a little too rigid, but it is also a helpful alternative way to think of things so that um like I said, that's like the healthier version again of like me telling myself, no, I have to do it.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah, as a little child, that's a boundary that could have helped me a lot. There's like, even if like this person, I don't know, wants to humiliate me or wants to punish me or wants me to feel guilty or something, it's still my choice whether I want to actually feel that.
Yeah, whether you internalize that that makes you a bad person or makes that like a mistake.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
a lot of my rationalizations are around that. Like sometimes it's as simple as like, I don't respect you. I don't care what you fucking think. You can't make me feel bad. I'm not feeling bad for you. Don't do that. Don't try that. Don't waste your time and my time. Thank
Hmm.
you.
Yeah, like,
Um,
but also like with friends, like I know they don't want me to feel bad. They just want to like fix the relationship or something. And so I'm just like, okay, I'll just not feel bad about
yeah.
this. I had this discussion recently with a friend of mine, like about how often people change beliefs, like some important beliefs in their lives. And like I'm in this rationalist community where everything is about like fluidly, like not attaching to beliefs and fluidly exchanging beliefs to fit the reality and always being truth seeking and yeah, and like well calibrated. And yeah, so my bubble, there's definitely like a lot of belief changing going on in my bubble. And it's like an important value and everything, but like the average person, like how often do they change important beliefs?
They don't they don't need to, right? Like the saying goes that it's not abnormal to not who know who you are, but it is atypical, abnormal to be worried about not knowing who you are. Like a lot of people never go through that self-reflection and either they're miserable and just accept it or they're
Mhm.
happy and there's nothing major they need to change like that that prompts that sort of
Yeah.
introspection and so it just doesn't happen. Um
Yeah, exactly. I have like a friend who seems to be like totally happy and emotionally regulated, secure in his attachments and everything. And I try to have conversations with him, but like his reaction is mostly, huh, I've never thought about that.
and it like it's endearing, it's kind of cute and precious and it's kind of fun and enjoyable, but it's also like um it can get boring if that's what you're after with that friend because, it's not really inquisitive. When I talk about people with like philosophy and stuff, I want to know their ideas. I want to be prompted myself to think about it differently as
Yeah.
well. Sometimes just for the act of thinking about it, just because it's fun, but also like maybe we can find a new kernel of truth between us.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm always super happy to like change my mind on things. And just a few days ago, I messaged someone, oh, by the way, in case it wasn't clear, I've completely changed my mind. Like, it's like a certain pride in like being able to do that effortlessly.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to steal that from you because um when I get manic, I can just be like, "Oh my God, I've discovered," and I get grandiose. "Oh my God, I've discovered the next revelation and this and that," and um, that's part of an old pattern that's not as prevalent. That I thought every next thing was like the magical solution, That's what I was seeking. That's also what I was seeking, right? So I had to change my mind what I was looking for. And but that was embarrassing to me. That's like anybody's paying attention longer than 5 minutes can tell I'm just a big fucking chaotic jumble.
No.
Like
Yeah, like I think I know that I will change my mind, and so I preemptively state my probabilities, at least internally. I'm like, okay, it's probably leaning toward this, feels like 60-70% or so. And then afterwards, I'm like, oh, okay, was totally wrong. Apparently, the 30-40% option was correct. So, like, that helps a bit to like make it less embarrassing.
I'm more comfortable with somebody screaming at me than holding the stuff in. It feels like there's resolution. I feel like I'm giving them a chance to get their shit out on me. I think that's like a fair trade even.
Yeah.
And I have totally so much as told people in the past, it's like, listen, if you want to fucking like lay into me or scream at me for that, that's okay. Thinking that they wanted that. That they felt like they really needed to, or felt like that might like maybe they didn't think about it, but that it would at least improve their mood. My most recent experience, this masochist person, I'll just two parts of a scene. So she had requested a black eye because she feels strong being beaten up because she can take it, and she wanted the black eye so that it made people uncomfortable and made them question and like, and it helps her be more comfortable being this person who likes this deviant thing, right? And that did happen. Some store clerk asked her, and I'm just like, the store clerk went like, "Oh, honey, do I need to talk to your boyfriend?" And I told her, "You should have said, number one, she's a girl, and I asked for it," which is beautifully ambiguous, like it's bad. I would totally want that person to be even less to be left with an even bigger question of their head of like, maybe she didn't really ask for it,
It
but she
was,
did.
it was fun.
What?
I might have done that by accident recently. It was fun.
It is funny when it's an accident, right? Um, but anyway, so I'm doing the stuff and she's like laying down and I'm talking about my plan. I'm like waiting for when it feels and looks like the right moment to do it. And I'm talking about plotting that out. And I go to just caress her face and she just shrieks in fear. And oh my God, that was delicious. It was tasty. And she loved it. She told me she hadn't felt fear in a very long time. And that helps wrestle emotions out of her like that. And little later in the scene, um I grabbed her hair to pull her into the position I wanted, and then I held her bit down by her throat to really physically subdue her. And I just sat there and soaked in the beauty that I was about to assault for a second. And I punched her in like the cheek. And I'm just like, I'm not 100% sure on that. And I did it again. And I'm like, oh, good. I changed, like her cheek had swollen up so much, it changed shape. And that was delightful to have that immediate feedback that I got exactly what I wanted. That I know it's gonna last. I don't have to go, oh, I don't know if I hit her hard enough. Yeah, I did. Um, uh, so that's some sort of like just direct hurting the person. There's a little more mental is when there's toys involved, and every toy does a different kind of thing. Like stinging, aching, like uh and different body parts, different and I get myself into this mode where I'm trying to walk their brain and their body through these waves of endorphins and to get them through certain thresholds so I can leave this person with as many marks so I can dispense as much pain and damage as I possibly can. And and I'll play with that. I'll play with getting them over and then you have to like sort of once you get them near, once their brain is sort of ready, is like warmed up to it, you have to push them over a threshold so that it gets into endorphins, or you'll smack something and then smack it a second time so it really stings, and then you'll caress it to give their brain that positive association while the warm endorphins flow through them. And as you get further, if the person is a beautiful, big enough pain slut, you get to the point where sometimes you push over the boundary deliberately to get their brain to the next threshold, which is like, I'm the one doing things here, not you. I'm just reliving an experience I really liked. And my favorite toy ever was both of these things at once. It was a leather flat leather flogger with like sharp, pointy 3D printed pyramids on it that I called the Spiketula. And I couldn't think of anything better than something that was an impact instrument that also drew blood. It was brilliant. Um, I've wanted to get into medvet, medical fetishism stuff. I have somebody I can probably go into that and experiment with. We're not there yet. I've thought about learning stuff. There's a way you can do skin removal that will make a scarification and you can draw beautiful patterns that way and people like that. And that sounds so intimate. Being this like pain surgeon. And something I'm going to be deliberately light on details is CNC, consensual non-consent. And I generally like SA, sexual assault play. I've had the delight of being able to act out a pretty realistic experience with that just uh the surprise and suddenness and like no perceived lead up. It was um and so that's different. I do CNC for like I feel like this dangerous loose cannon. And if this person is that comfortable with me doing something like this to them, then maybe I'm fine, you know? And the person who did that, I did that with, was the same way that they're now more comfortable pushing their own boundaries because they know at the end of there is a safe word, and but no is not the safe word. And so they know that at the end of the day, they're safe. And so they can play outside of the bounds of their comfort zone and it be in an environment like that. I don't know, it's really emotionally rewarding and it just happens to like I get to let a lot of aggression out at the same time. I'm wistful. I miss that.
But like there are also like values, behavioral codes, whatever you might call it, that would make someone feel like disappointed if they act certain things out that they at some point decided they didn't want to act out.
Yeah, like is what you're getting at that like you know, I have my values, even if I don't. Some of them just don't have emotions backing them up. I don't feel bad if I were to go back on them, but I still don't want to. That's still not the kind of person I want to be.
Yeah, exactly. It's how it works for me most of the time now. Like I used to have all of these like internal threats of like guilt and shame and whatnot that I would experience, and now that I've like let go of those, what remains is like I don't want to do the thing. So it's um I mean, not wanting to do a thing is always like the result of some complicated trade-off. Like, sure, like it would have like this pleasurable effect and would have like this other effect, but like on net, I don't want to do the thing anyway. And well, it works.
I feel bad that I kind of can't talk myself out of wanting to do the things.
Hmm.
And partly again, like I've said before, it makes me afraid of not being able to recover sufficiently.
But like, for how long has this calendar been shared with you now?
This what?
For how long has this calendar been shared with you?
Several months.
Well, so far you haven't done anything, so it could be evidence that you're actually doing a pretty good job at not actually wanting to do the thing on net.
On net, yeah. No, but I do genuinely feel bad when I lose that battle to people I care about. So we talked about my recent fight with Riley,
Hmm.
and in my mind, if I just felt bad um about wanting to end a friendship or cut them out like that over that, it would maybe, even if that feeling doesn't overtake me, right? I would, it would be easier to not do that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And sometimes I lose those battles with people who do matter to me. I guess I can't help but feel guilty over it a bit. I don't feel a lot of guilt, but it's just I guess I still haven't changed my mind that I want to be better for Riley. They've done so much for me. Back when I started to be able to feel their love for me, the first way it hit me was just like, you'll put up with all this shit of mine for real? You mean it? And then it hitting me that like they were interested in my actual personal growth. That's because they wanted me to be happy, not just because they're tolerant. And I'm like, oh. And I guess I'm proud of myself. That even in breaking up with them, I haven't let that connection shrivel up. I still want to be better for them because I am still close to them.
Hmm.
Feel like I owe it to them. I feel like there should be a better way of internalizing it than owing him, like it's an obligation, but
Hmm.
I struggle to imagine a different way.
But you also want to be better for yourself, right?
Yeah, but those are like in two different whole worlds in my head. I guess
Mhm.
that's normal.
Mhm.
I don't know what's normal there at all.
Yeah,
Uh,
then let me be curious once more. One of my notes from the last part of the interview was to ask you how you think. So, like, some people have like an internal monologue, some people have like an internal dialogue between like 10 people or something, and some people just have silence, like me, most of the time, and just like thoughts themselves. Others seem to like mostly use imagery for thinking. So yeah, was curious how it works for you.
I have an internal dialogue, but it's definitely more prevalent and worse when I'm locked in my OCD.
Hmm.
Um, when I'm in the moment or I'm in a flow state, it's primarily abstract. Like if I'm fixing something mechanical or electronic, or I'm machining something. It's all abstract and imagery. But my dialogue can definitely take me over, and it can be hard to see anything outside of what I'm obsessing over at the time, which is like the definition of OCD, how it tunnel visions you.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
I guess I mean to say in my young adulthood to adulthood, I've had much more of an internal dialogue. But up until, let's say, high school, it was definitely abstract and imagery first, and then I'd have to translate it into
mm,
words to get my ideas out. And I'm just trying to return to that.
hmm. Yeah, I think I started with like the internal monologue around age 8 and then stopped at age 25 roughly. And yeah, like for me, the downside has been that it hindered my introspection because I like pretended that the narration is everything that I was thinking when it was like a small fraction of what I was thinking, just sort of some kind of distilled and sometimes fictional story that I told myself. So in a way, it hindered my introspection. Yeah, like the first thoughts are also very like many and very nuanced and very complex for me, that there are like all these different factors. Like if I'm late for something, then there is sort of the frustration of like having over the thing that has led to me being late, then like the worries about how people will react, whether I'm interrupting something, or people will like think about me when I'm when I like show up late for something and they don't know me yet, they don't know that it's like something that doesn't happen too often for me, and like all of these things come together, and then the second thought is, so how do I guilt externalize now? What can I blame? And I'm like, no, you don't have to do that. Chill. And yeah, I suppose then the third thought is how I like actually show up and apologize for being late or something, and then nothing else. Maybe talk about
Yeah, you get to
my
integrate
struggles
it. That's
with them.
perspective taking usually, right?
Hmm.
Um, from what I would glean, what I would figure is developmentally, um, first thought is basically your id, right?
Hmm.
And it's your base impulses, desires, feelings, etc. And when you're young, your second thought will be more from your ego. Your super ego hasn't really formed.
Hmm.
And I feel like as you grow older, your second thought comes from your super ego.
Hmm.
It's right, like you're saying, it's more in response to like uh how other people will react to it's that's where all the shame and stuff gets internalized. And then your ego has now shifted into a place where it's trying to help mediate that again. And I my intuition would be that they flip again when one hits a more harmonious state. That you feel something, you're hungry, and you go, I could do this. And then you think, yeah, but not right now, because everyone's gonna hate me if I eat a pizza in front of them. And um that's my intuition. That's a big like I bet.
Hmm.
Um but I think that makes sense because our ego our ego super ego is supposed to be keeping our ego in check. And it's when we have a lot of toxic guilt or shame that our super ego would need our ego to come back and put it in check. Um
Yeah, like I used to have a very punitive superego, so I think he was in the end to like get the superego to chill out and just trust that the ego, if like those are the right terms, that the ego will like want the right thing anyway.
Yeah. Um, and that the ego knows when to like check itself and go ask the superego again. Because like
Yeah.
they in the Freudian thing, your id is underneath the water. It's subconscious and unconscious, and stuff can go. It'll precipitate into the ego. The ego is what helps you. The ego is the beginning of your like idea that I am separate from the world. And so it's as simple as like, I want this right now. Well, I can't have it right now.
Hmm.
Kind of mediation of your spontaneous experience and how do you get that to interact with the world. And
Hmm.
then your super ego, um, but that's still very self-focused. And the superego tends to in the Freudian model, the superego is both above and below water and helps mediate them as a whole. And that's why it's more like other-faced. Because that's what's really lacking in ego and id. Um so like no, I would think, somebody that's healthy, their super ego comes in last. It makes sure they perspective take, but it doesn't make them like hang on it. It's not in charge.
Hmm.
Like that's basically what DBT is, right? I absolutely it helps me like I'm having to DBT and MBT mentalization based therapy myself like all the time or frequently. It's not as frequent now, but frequently. And that helps me with a similar thing of like if I'm notice I'm splitting or I just notice I'm in an unhelpful pattern, I can at least stop and try and synthesize the opposite, like the scholastic method, and go, does that seem as reasonable or as unreasonable? If that sounds just as reasonable, the other extreme, what am I doing? What is this? And at least get my brain back into a more self-reflective pattern. Um, if it's not that, if I can synthesize like a totally different way of looking at something, if I can get my brain to get closer to the abstract and just get a spontaneous, better way of looking at the situation, or just an attempt at it, I can go, yeah, I'm clearly not looking at this in a helpful way, at least, and maybe not objective at all. And in a similar way, I'm testing the waters of my own perception in that moment instead of just my feelings. Um, because in that kind of moment, I'm trying not to tell myself, um, my feelings are wrong, but I'm trying to tell myself my understandings or my perceptions that are leading to my current feelings aren't the way to go. And because only once I bring that back and I'm back into a more integrated self state does the stuff like, yeah, but now how do I actually feel? What do I actually want? Can I do that again when I'm disintegrated,
Hmm.
when I'm splitting or I'm dissociating? I can't really reach down there. And
Hmm.
I certainly try to keep a lot of little things in mind that um something specifically just to counter some patterns I notice, and some things just like gaining a more helpful self-narrative and a more helpful um view of other people that go so that like internalizing them as like values or beliefs to some degree so that like my current perception due to strong emotions is challenged because I go, no, that's not what I believe. And I know I believe that for like not no reason. I know I formed that belief over time for a reason. So I really shouldn't go willy-nilly and just burn everything down right now.
Mm,
Um, that's a really granular look of it,
mm. Do you
but
actually want
it can also be literal like MBT too. Or DBT. Just
to?
if I catch myself if I'm just if I'm not just split, but I'm actively splitting and I'm flipping and I catch it, I can go, these two don't make sense next to each other. What is going on?
Yeah. Like, can you perhaps go even more granular? Like, do you use any particular skills or sub skills from the DBT toolkit, like from the stop skill or something? Like the stepping back, I think, was in there, and I know maybe also some parts of the tip skill or something. Or and is it like first the DBT skills and then afterwards the MBT, or how do you use it?
Normally I would do MBT first because um let's bring up let's bring up the Friendsgiving thing again, where that helps remind me that, my friend Kai is only trying to be helpful and um because in the moment I'll be reacting to some I'll often be reacting to some really negative assumption. Like I said, that like in the moment when I want to just straight up go, I just be like, you're gonna move the car, right? Okay, good. I just gotta, I'm just gonna go sit in my car for a bit. I'm gonna move my car and just sit in it for a bit. I'll be back, I don't know, in 10 minutes, half an hour, everything's fine. I just need to calm my head down. Please don't worry about it. I won't want to do that because if in the moment I have the time to reflect, I'll go. I'll I'll I'm trying to like just actually do it. I'll think to myself, well, what would actually help me if I left the situation? Why am I not just doing that? This. But wait, is that what she's actually doing? Is that what she's actually thinking? No. And then, with MBT, you then think of it from the other person's perspective. She's probably trying to do something more like this. Okay, well, now that I know she's trying to be helpful, I'm going to tell her I'm doing this because this is most helpful for me now. Okay, yeah, right. No, I can, and then back to myself. Yeah, I can trust her, etc. And um, because that can help me even within a split,
Hmm.
and that can get me out of the thought patterns that are reinforcing the split or are keeping me from escaping it. That maybe, it helps me bring about those things I don't realize I'm projecting. Because MBT basically breaks projection down.
Yeah.
Because that's what mentalization is. If you're mentalizing, you're most likely not projecting.
Mm.
The control mindset thinking. Because you like hit it exactly. That in order to make that stuff internally consistent, you have to believe that hostile control is often enough necessary and useful, and thus the right course of action. And that's in conflict with a healthier, more nuanced self-image
Mm.
directly, right? And just that, just that part
Mm.
alone. And they can't coexist if you want to be if you don't want to keep the cognitive dissonance machine going.
Yeah. Yeah, like a friend of mine has these has like a lot of values that she lives by de facto. She calls them standards, and also like has this idea of like that would be like more internally consistent or something to be fully evil, but then wouldn't be able to have these standards. And so like this drive for sort of an internal consistency of motivations toward being evil is in conflict with these standards that like serve like very useful functions for like societal existence. And yeah, then there's this constant cognitive dissonance between those. And yeah, I suppose like for me it was the opposite of like trying to uphold an image of being like not making mistakes and being perfect and everything and totally failing at that and trying to hide that from myself. And I suppose like both of these extremes necessarily break down and then cause a lot of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, I wanna take one moment to note how much yours is oriented around self-image and then the other is oriented around avoiding self-image. It's
Well, avoiding self-image is just another self-image, I suppose.
yeah, just not caring what the self-image ends up being. Well, no, so like no, I internalized values like that early on, and I feel like it's a springboard, right? Um when you start to connect those values, those standards you hold to yourself to the actual impact they have on other people, um it can start to turn into a self-image because then you realize the value of what you do for people is. And that's almost definitionally what a healthy self-image is, right? Um, and I don't know, I like it's for me when I started that, it was just very hard to fight all of the other things. And it was me reminding myself, I've fight all these rigid antisocial patterns. And it's just me reminding myself that when I've sat down to think of it, no, it broadly makes sense to be pro-social in these ways. And I'm gonna try and talk myself out of it and manipulate myself out of it. But I know better. I thought about this before, and I shouldn't waste my effort right now, and I should lean on that value, that standard I hold to myself. And but then again, at least for me, that did eventually start to recall why I came to those conclusions. And then as that does, I started to feel things about them. And um and then eventually I'm able to get myself to get into the point where like the rational thinking is there to determine like course of action, not it's not the thing that's doing the reality testing itself. It's not the thing determining who people are and why and what's going on, in a world where you don't care about your self-image and you don't have empathy or you don't have much empathy. That's that's what it all is. You're keeping this list of attributes. You're keeping the score, really. Maybe you're trying to do it in a healthy way, but you're keeping the score of Has this person typically done things for me as I've done things for them, etc., and trying to maybe analyze it holistically, but you're doing it in this very data-oriented, rational way. And even if it's just cognitive empathy, empathy is thus another source of information and or another source of data. And it's just recognizing that people are trying to give you that information freely. Um, but and like so, like I said, in a world devoid of that data stream, you know, you're having to figure out what somebody's actually about and whether they're good for you based on just all externalities. And so it just ends up being that.
Hmm. Yeah, that also like ties it back to the teleological non-mentalizing and problems with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Yeah, and
wondering.
that's why psychopaths can drive themselves entirely fucking nuts.
Mhm. Drive themselves entirely fucking nuts? But why
Yeah,
themselves?
yeah, because that's very obsessional. So the with stuff that concerns other people, um cognitive or affective empathy really helps you know when you've like come to a conclusion. And if you don't have that inward information
Mm,
stream, um, you know, you get it leads you towards some paranoid thinking of all sorts of other things because you don't
mm,
know where the good stopping point is. And and also, when you're not really connected with them emotionally, it's
mm,
not an intuitive connection without that intuitive system to be connected to people with your connection system suppressed or not there. You know,
mm,
you're just going through all these possibilities of what might happen, what might not happen, what that means to you, what that means to them, just
mm,
purely cognitively, and that's obsessive. And without knowing where that ends, without having an intuition to where that ends.
mm.
Um, if you have a very complex or a very stressful life, you're gonna just drive yourself nuts.
Yeah, I also see like how lots of psychopaths struggle with having any kind of like empathy or understanding of themselves. So like self-mentalization. And then yeah, like come up with all sorts of theories of why they might be doing things and struggle to actually find out why they're doing things because like nothing probably resonates in any particular way, so everything seems equally likely and probably have a lot of trouble like introspecting on what's actually going on and then takes a long time to find out.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like having to just like find out you get pissed off and for what seems like this reason when somebody does this thing in this way in this situation and trying to like extrapolate that externally. So like, that's imagine having to do that not just with other people but to,
Yeah.
yourself. It'll drive it'll drive you nuts. I remember in that Amy Thomas interview I keep pulling from that she said um that that can drive psychopaths nuts because of if they don't have a more successful life or just as you get older that shit's harder to keep up.
Hmm.
And And the saddest fucking part is like, I mean, you know, I can even remember myself being in the thick of that when my life was hard in certain ways, and I didn't have as many faculties to handle it or as much of a support network, and just truly driving myself nuts and not realizing that I was like going into psychosis or something, not feeling the stress, not recognizing my own
Mm.
suffering at all. Um, and seeing a lot of the genuine contributing factors to it, but without seeing the emotional dimension to it. I'm not going to just go, all right, I'm just going to
Mm.
veg out in bed for 2 days straight. And do I really have to deal with all that right now? No. So am I going to deal with all of it right now? No. And it's giving your brain the time to reset.
Mm. Yeah, imagine like in this case, you are probably actually not in touch with like these internal feedback mechanisms and like your actual feelings about the situation and such. And I suppose another variation on that is if someone is in touch with it, but like doesn't trust it, like thinks that. That's me, by the way. Thinks that something is only real if, like, I can reason from first principles, like why I'm experiencing it, and if I'm experiencing it, and but I don't know why. Like, I cannot argue for it step by step why I'm experiencing that, and it's like, nope, that doesn't make sense.
That is that is so delightfully rationalist coded. That's like beautifully disgusting.
I find it helpful how like these communities install like missing introjects for me, like this curiosity thing, for example, has been super helpful for all sorts of reasons, for like self-discovery and for like creating some kind of distance from otherwise overwhelming emotions and still be able to understand them, still be able to learn from them. And yeah, so I know I want to take this back to like the like
Yeah.
self-soothing and other purposes of like introjects. Um, there seem to be like these three different types of people, like these three different archetypes. The one person who has like all the healthy introjects and knows how to self-soothe, can use like their curiosity to investigate their emotions and has like some kind of like truth-seeking drive that when they notice something, then they wonder, oh, am I doing this with everything? Am I making some systematic mistake here that I can fix? And and then there is like the person who has like all sorts of really bad introjects, like all sorts of patterns from their parents that keep them stuck, keep them self-hating, keep them um, like turning away their friends and losing relationships and all sorts of and going to prison. I don't know, all sorts of behavioral patterns that they've like picked up from like their parents or some peers in their childhood and that have like not served them well. But then there's also seem to be people who have like very few introjects and mostly like don't like maybe even themselves feel empty in a way and don't really know who they are. Sometimes like borrow a particular introject from one person they meet while they meet the person and then they're alone at home again and it's gone and they forget about it. And I see that like some people seem to associate pathological narcissism with A, having like particular unhelpful introjects, like parents who condition the children very traumatically in like particular directions that are important for these parents, or people who were just neglected a lot in childhood, and so mostly just lack all the helpful introjects. And both of these like seem very different to me, but both of them have been called narcissistic personality disorder or pathological narcissism at different times by different authors. So I'm confused. What's the connection between those, and with which can you empathize more? Why do they
I
look so similar?
um because I think they both lead to a feeling of lacking.
Mm-hmm.
One, the first one, the former, the second one you brought up, you punish yourself and you deny yourself. So you end up with a feeling of lacking as you never, um, you apologize yourself. It's like, let's say somebody with a more dependent mindset would apologize for enjoying themselves because they're afraid they're being too much, right? And that introject leaves one with a sense of emptiness anyway. And I, I definitely empathize with that more because my primary introject would be my father. And um but I still empathize with and understand the latter because I there's a lot of situations I haven't had the time to experience and have my own view on it, and I'll end up spinning my wheels in my head. Or those will be the places that I don't realize that I'm not fulfilling or serving because there's no interject, healthy or unhealthy or neutral. So let's say with my a desire to do some writing and my desire to do some art for art's sake, just to doodle. I I had art like taken away from me, and then I had stuff that would lead me away from it reinforced when I was young. But I really do like doodling. But I don't end up there. When I start drawing and I make anything that looks nice at all, it feels fucking incredible instantly. But I lack really any introject there. So that some parts of my creative drive feel empty, um, even with the chaos in my head. I think it's a spectrum, and it's just harder to know the stuff that you're in a way devoid of. You're not devoid of it deeper down if you can get all the chaos to go quiet, but you're devoid of a reflex to lean towards it if you don't have an introject for something that you kind of really need.
Mm.
Um I get that with when I'm bored and or sad and I'm wondering and I'm trying to fantasize about what I'll do in the future. Um I can find myself thinking of either very practical or very entrepreneurial things. And if I'm tired of it, or I'm just trying to get myself to prime myself to think of another way to fulfill my life, like I can feel this weird emptiness of like, yeah, but where am I supposed to go? There's clearly something I'm not serving or not satisfying.
Mm.
What is it? And I'll be at a total loss. And I can only be at a total loss for so long before my brain will try to reflexively go back to the things I already know. So I can empathize with both. And I think that it's a spectrum. And again, I think it's that both make you feel lacking. With the harsh interjects, I think that my opinion would be that it gives you the feeling of lacking from
Mm.
denying yourself these things.
Yeah, like I have some experience with a few friends of mine who have like this sort of very like addictive or almost addictive in some cases type of sadism where they are kind of aware that they are seeking that kind of pleasure all the time. It's not just like for vengeance or something. And they try to
It's just
control
like
that
boredom.
with,
Yeah.
yeah, they try to control that. Yeah, but also like sort of pretty extreme pleasure in some cases, so that like I suppose even if they weren't bored, they'd still prefer that. But like they're trying to control that in ways that seem very OCD to me. And so I'm wondering like if they get in touch more fully with themselves, with their feelings, with who they actually are, beyond the teleological facade, would that help? Like, and then instead, like, gradually get rid of all of these obsessive and compulsive patterns? Would that help them have like a more, like, become happier, have a more pro-social life in general, have an easier time living a pro-social life? Or would it be dangerous because these like OCPD traits or OCD traits prevent them from acting on their sadism?
Um, I think this almost more comes down to like a faith in people, you know? Because I would say broadly and long ways, like there's a tons of steps in between. What you're saying is basically they would need to do a more holistic recovery. That yes, it would, um, but I think that starts with a redefinition of trust
Say more.
because huh?
Say more.
Yeah, no, when I talk with people with BPD, that have a different toxic relationship with self-taught trust, what I try to help them, how I try to help them is I tell them that when you trust yourself, you're not expecting yourself to never make a mistake. You're expecting yourself in the long game to improve as you would expect another person that if they make a mistake, they care and it will change over time. That the kind of person you can't trust is someone who makes the mistake and either doesn't care or doesn't do what they need to do to change it. And I think the start with that is just trying to internalize a more nuanced version of trust. No.
Oh, we have another interview guest. Hi, Farwell.
She's so content already.
Yeah.
Or are you getting restless again? What you want? Farvel.
Farewell, farewell. Would you generally advise for like when it comes to sadism, for example, to not just like suppress and distract and never indulge, but to find harmless replacement behaviors instead?
Yeah, because if they're anything like me, they could put it into aggression in some way. Like one of the softest core versions of that is combat LARP. I did Dagger here. It's spelled Dagorhir, Dagger here, combat LARP in Pennsylvania, and there's several forms of that kind, and they call it wacky bats. Because you have these like foam swords and other foam weapons, and they're designed and to a strict standard that at least with Dagger here, you can really wallop somebody, and probably the only gross risk is maybe breaking like a small bone like a finger, and that's not a high risk. It's just probably the worst thing that could happen that day. And So the risk becomes tolerable. And not all of them are like that. Some of them are more role play intensive, and some of them have like role play elements like magic spells and stuff. But Dagger Hero is just good old wacky bats, motherfucker. And one example of the culture in Dagger Hero is the person being attacked kind of determines whether the attack was strong enough. So let's say I'm fighting somebody and they don't really hit me very hard, and I go light, light, like I'm saying they hit me light, 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 light. Let me show you how hard you're supposed to hit me. Just uh clock them with my 55-inch red. And oh man, I miss that. So even the culture of Dagger Hero was very sadistically and very power and controlling pleasurable. Everything about it was great. But it had
Yeah.
all sorts of healthy and pro-social aspects to it. And um you know, stuff like that is just a more aggressive, in my opinion, equivalent to like a more typical person might sublimate their anger into like working out at a gym. And I think that's more accessible to somebody with sovereignism, kind of commanding yourself to get past something. Um, but there's stuff like that. There's there's BDSM and kink scenes. Um, Getting into a contact sport that you have investment with. Let's say for girls, you could do roller derby. For guys, you could do um hockey, where there's like hockey is like a great example because hockey is the only sport with jail, right? Like they just expect fights to happen. And so there is an upward bound to what's acceptable. And it's not entirely unokay to just get pissed off at maybe even your teammate and go punch him in the fucking face or something, right? And you might just get ejected. In worst case, you even just get ejected from the game. You're not going to get banned from the sport if you don't like permanently injure somebody, right? Um, if you don't break somebody's leg, you're probably just going to get in a lot of trouble. And so there's soft limits. And with the dagger here too, there's still also soft limits, both with how they design the weapons and what you do that actually achieves your goal. You don't need to hit anybody more than twice for them to be considered dead and have to go back to start and respawn, right? And and unless you're into everyone trying to pile onto you, you don't want to hit somebody as hard as possible every time, or you will make yourself the target. There's soft limits, um, cultural limits, in a place where this strong physical aggression is acceptable. And roller derby too, where it's valued if you kind of go forward and everyone accidentally kind of footballs themselves because you're all in roller skates and um I don't know, I once saw this girl with a tampon up her nose. Um and she was proud of herself for like being able to whatever injury she sustained, whether she fell over or accidentally rammed into somebody or something. And wish I knew more about roller derby.
Yeah.
Or
Those
there's
things are
stuff if they're more about the body control, you can get into European, either Italian or German sword fighting. So not the normal fencing usually, but the broadsword stuff.
good.
Um, and if they really want tough but and they have the time and the money to make metal armor, there's something called SCA. And the time and the armor is not worth it to me. But SCA's weapons are wooden, and so let's say an SCA helmet has a maximum hole size because just about everything goes. You know, with your wooden sword, you don't want to be able to accidentally go through somebody's helmet and poke out their eye. But you're also allowed to just brawl, just fucking walk up and grapple or just punch him right in the fucking face. Um, you're armored, so you're allowed to just fight.
Do you think it's
Um,
critical that all these parts have a certain ritual to them? That you go to a particular place that has a particular aesthetic and a particular smell, and you put on particular clothes for it, and you pay, you check in and you check out, so that like the time during which you indulge in these pleasures is like delineated at the beginning and the end. Um,
yeah, maybe it feels like, okay, I did a session of this. I feel like there's also social aspects. So with SCA has the strongest social aspect of all this because they actually have like a fiefdom hierarchy thing going on for real. And uh uh because like with Dagger here we'd have our group, you know, we would as a sometimes we do smaller skirmishes and it would be like this team versus that team or just like, you know, brandishing our colors and we're being part of a bigger thing. But with SCA, you know, the people you're fighting with and alongside, there's almost some degree of like, yeah, well, I'm winning for my team's honor. I am jousting that motherfucker in the face for my team's honor too. And there's like royalty there. And there's actually a pretty positive culture around that. Um uh so it may even be a good thing that with maybe the most violent of these, there's the most safeguards in place, and there's the um strongest social structure. Like you want to be a part of these people more, and you will have more fun if you do that.
mhm.
Um, or it's basically necessary. And there's normally things to be gained from doing so. Like even with Dagger here, just at the minimum of our little group, you know, at least bi-weekly, but often weekly, and sometimes they would come over and do it twice a week, someone else's house. We'd come over and practice. Or it would be a night where you come over and you build your custom shield or your custom sword, or you like arrows and you're building all of your arrows. And there's a craft aspect to it if you're into that. And I was doing that because I built a minimum viable shield so that I could have the shield up here near my hand and protect and use it as a buckler. When you wielded the weapon, if the weapon's long enough, it's considered a red. And if you wield it with both hands and you declare red or someone's paying the right attention, that shield breaks and the person that's using the shield against you has to you either have to consider it's gone or they have to throw it aside.
Mhm.
And so I was trying to adapt it to my aggressive fighting style, and they don't just make a shield like that, so I was having to make it. But I just got a ready-made high quality sword. Because I didn't need anything special. But eventually I wanted to make a sword. I wanted to have a certain color scheme, to go with the rest of the stuff I did. I never ended up getting that far. That's a shame. But so there's a positive communal aspect to it. that even that can have advantages of just
Mhm.
having better weapons or a better shield or stuff that you want to be involved with the people. I think a lot of these are important just by also just being that they introduce a pro-social framework that has soft bounds in which this thing is either allowed, encouraged, or just literally necessary.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, I wonder whether that makes something like Dagger here or SCA like superior to, for example, street fighting. I don't know a whole lot about street fighting, but from what I've heard, these people didn't really know each other, and they were also just sort of meeting up in random places. And there's probably a lot less like ritual and culture and such around it, at least in like those particular communities. So I would imagine that it's like a higher risk of like spilling over, or perhaps in the case of my friends, they would probably not trust themselves to let themselves go, if they don't have like this clearly delineated like ritual to it.
yeah, no, you know, I'll stop and say street fighting is fun, but in the right circle, um, you know, people aren't going to probably let you kill somebody or maim them past a certain point because they're there for fun ultimately.
Mm.
And some circles know that's not true if it's more random. You never know who you're gonna meet. And in this you can naturally have some trust that that
Mm.
person might just make it hurt tomorrow. And you're not gonna have a reason to go further and maybe put yourself in jail.
Yeah, that also like requires that you trust the other person to be sufficiently experienced to know what will hurt for how long. And I know, like, do you have experience with particular street fighting communities?
Um, no, just a few times in my younger years, I got to talking about the martial arts I did, and I just found out somebody else did it, and we happened to be in the right place at the right time, and we had fun throwing down.
Mhm.
Um, I happened to be a good judge of character in the like few times I did it, but I also didn't do it often because
Mhm.
I knew better. I didn't want to just get my like face beaten in.
Mhm. Yeah, cool. Thanks for all these insights. I'd like to switch to like um I know, first to a slightly different topic and then to a somewhat different topic. There is this question here about hating one's own weakness or hating weakness in general. I think you mentioned at some point that you hated yourself for perceived weaknesses. And I wonder, is that still a problem? And in general, sort of what can one do about that? Because like a lot of my friends struggle with hating weakness and so are unable to connect to certain parts of themselves and also like react with like some aggression to other people. Uh,
Yeah, that's totally still a thing I suffer from, even if like it's not an emotional reaction, just the
hmm,
way I think, my frame of mind, just or just a habits. It's where most of my pathological emotional suppression just comes from. Like I might just be anxious in a situation, and instead of just letting myself feel it and let it be no biggie,
hmm,
I'll be trying to talk myself out of the anxiety when maybe it's just so completely reasonable to feel that it's not going to go away like that. And it can be as mundane as that. But, it can be as much as like, all right, well, Tiffany, you plan on staying up all night and all day, so you will stay up until 9 p.m. You will make no exceptions, and you will rest and you will get up. And after you eat, the first thing you will do is you will start looking for a job because until you make headway on that, you're, what the fuck are you worth? Well, you're a useless sack of shit. You're not going to be able to support yourself because you keep letting yourself get away with it. Da 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 da. And and the problem of where that gets projected onto other people is because of like internalizing that that's the right and most helpful, most productive way to be. I
Mm,
would say that's also like my primary barrier with empathy too.
mm,
Like I'll go like with the incident at Kai's Thanksgiving in my head just being like, why don't you just shut up for a minute? Why not? Is that so hard? Come on. Why don't you just not apologize? Why don't you just not do it? Is it really that fucking hard? And the answer is yes. And but I'm seeing it as weakness and it's making and in a heightened emotional state when I was triggered like that, it's very hard to see outside of that pattern.
yeah, ironically, I feel like giving you a hug, but then I would make you feel weak or something as a result. So.
No, I think this is like the perfect time for that because I would actually feel like it's a hug of like, you're so strong, you learned how to not have to be strong. I feel like that actually exists in this moment.
That's perfect.
You're a fucking cutie.
Oh, thank you. Yes, you. I was also wondering, like, whether it might be useful to just value a lot of things. Like, whenever people value only this one thing, that introduces a certain fragility and rigidity. Like, I suppose, like, fragility and rigidity sort of go hand in hand. Rigidity is sort of defending against the fragility. And but like if someone just values like 100 things, they value strength and they value insight and they value her capacity to apologize or like, well, if she actually does something wrong, maybe she actually has the capacity to take responsibility for that to an unusual degree. And um, yeah, and I don't know, 90 other things that one could value in that situation, and then that could give someone just a lot of flexibility for like how to view a situation, jump between viewpoints very flexibly because there's no uh, like they're not attached to any one of them. And when they have like some narcissistic injury along one dimension, then there are like 99 other dimensions along which they are unharmed.
Yeah,
So,
no, I think that would work because even in some of the extreme examples of people you've told me, they still have certain standards, right? And even if those standards come back to control, which still seems to be the through line here, there the thing isn't always strength that standard is trying to uphold. And even if they're very that those kind of things, those kind of rules they set for the people set for themselves, or the values they have, or the standards they hold themselves to, I think are good pathways
mm,
to valuing things. And I think that's a good pathway to self-reflection too, because then you start asking yourself, why do I have that standard of my I hold myself to and that I want to keep it? Why would I want anybody to have that standard for themselves? And why would
yeah.
I value it?
Yeah, like I'm also thinking of myself, like last time I had some kind of injury, like was about like thinking that I had already healed something and then noticing, ouch, actually I'm somewhat less healed than I had thought, and then I was like, ah, damn, that hurts. Like the hurt itself, but also realizing that I'm less healed than I had thought. But like at the same time, it didn't change anything about like, I don't know, well, 99% of my my view of myself. So I was still like very stable in that situation, could ask for help, could ask someone to support me a little, and then a couple hours later I felt great. And I think like just having so much else to lean on is also like really helpful in a situation like that.
I think so too. I think it's also funny how rational coded of a narcissistic injury that is, right? Like, oh man, but aren't I so good at improving myself? Apparently not. I I love it. And that's probably actually one of the reasons why it was so easy to tank and to soothe because like it has so many other moving parts backing it by nature. I am really happy that some friends have come forward to me and told me that they were able to find closure with their feelings of like their narcissistic mom, dad, or ex because they realized I'm making hard choices to be better. And that means their abuser didn't make those choices, and they were never responsible for their abuser's happiness. Ever. That abusive person, always could have made those tough choices, and that's on them. And it's relieved them from a lot. I always hoped something like that would happen, and I wasn't sure that that's like that was the way, and I really like it is because it's really empowering and it reminds me of how tough the choices I make are, even if a lot of the time I feel like I don't have a choice. But I guess that's just like me saying I just wouldn't not do it. That's not who I am.
People are often confused when psychologists, usually, I don't know, outside certain object relations to, circles talk about objects. So, like within the object relations tradition, it just means person or something. It's like super generic term. But like in general, the people are often talking about like seeing other people as objects when they really mean something like teleological non-mentalizing or something. And I find that though to be like a really apt like metaphor because I don't do like projection for, as far as I know, and like I don't do like I don't know all sorts of other sort of externalizing defenses with people. But then when I don't know a pen drops from the table and I get pissed at this pen for dropping from the table, or I like get some of my hair dye onto the shower curtain or something, then suddenly I do.
Then you go, why did you put the shower curtain there? Why did you make the table so messy? Yeah.
Yeah, no, like even worse. I'm like, Pen, that's like your own fault for falling down. I'm not gonna pick you up or something like that. Or like, shower curtain, you're such an idiot. Why are you getting in the way of like my hair dye? And and so I'm like, okay, if I thought of other people, of other humans or non-human animals as objects, then maybe I would be just as likely to use primitive defenses with those people. And so, like, this metaphor of the object taken literally allows me to empathize with people who use externalizing defenses. So, I think, like, the analogy of saying that people who use these teleological non, like, have this teleological non-mentalizing going on all the time, that they treat other people as objects or view other people as objects is actually relatively apt, given my how well this analogy worked for me. And I've been wondering, like, how would you like? Did you experience that at some point? Would you say that is like an apt analogy? And how else would you like explain what this is like to have this kind of non-mentalizing mode, and how has this changed over time? Like, have people sort of gained more depth, or have they have they become more real, or their internal experiences more real over time? And like, in which cases are they distinguished from like literal objects, and in which cases do they resemble literal objects more?
Um, well, like all the above is improved. 'Cause like my experience with it is like if we take the pen analogy, it's like, why is that like, what I'll even think of, maybe some viewers can connect with this. There's weed vape pens, and they're round and they'll just fall off the fucking table. Well, I have ones that are square and they don't fall off the table. So it's like, when you view things in that teleological, non-mentalizing way, you're seeing things as like, well, that's your nature. Don't you know better than to indulge in it? Don't you know better than to not lean yourself towards it? Um, and if you can think back, if I, you can easily come up with examples of like what would create that, like, you know, my father would say when he was pushing me to go to college, uh, people who take a break don't go back. Like, like that's just human nature. If you do that, it will lead to that. So don't do it, or that's going to happen and you'll end up a failure. And it's this viewing people with this rigid, assumed nature. And you'll see that come out, you know, maybe more readily with someone who just has NPD, going, wait, people aren't like basically selfish, you know? And you could say maybe they're not even basically selfless either, but they'll be like, that's what happened to me, and I'm like, "Oh, man, no, I'm like that and I'm just assuming everybody else is. Oh, great, fun." You begin to see that in people, and you realize when you help somebody, or when somebody helps you. Honestly, more importantly, that's the one that really hit me first. When, let's say, somebody helps me, you know, it's because they want that thing to be easier for me, or they know how hard it is without it, and that they genuinely care about relieving the suffering or the happiness it brings. And with that, with feeling that's real, that's been kind of first to me. And then I'll see that, then I more slowly start to more intuitively see that in other people. Um, um, and then also just like interest. You start to see that in yourself, and you start to be interested in how somebody got here, or at least all the bullshit they had to go through here. Because with I would focus on all the just crap I've had to go through in life, and I would at least be curious as to how somebody else dealt with that, overcame it, and then eventually that connects with how it leads to their goals, how it leads to how they're feeling. I at least had the mental space for it, but slowly those do emotionally connect, as they'll persist in my mind over time, in my brain.
Mm.
Um, and you know, as those connect, then somebody really starts to have a depth they feel like they have, a life they've gone through, and things that they're going through now. And there feels like a weight to it. And but that's been an incredibly long time coming. Like, if I don't specifically think about it with you, if you're telling me about like your stories of the people you've helped, I'd have to really specifically think about, like, imagine you progressing through that and stuff. But I have more and more reasons to think about that, and sometimes those things do just like hit on their own. There's just something within me that it happens to resonate with, and it'll click. The way I learned love with Riley was it started out like I just at first realized that they put up with so much of my shit, and that at least gave me the reason to have almost unqualified but deep emotional trust with them. And then from there, I learned that they are interested in my happiness broadly, not just in this moment, but through life, period. And they really understand and feel for the struggles I've gone to that have led me up to this point. And I'm just like, and that's never going to go away. And I'm like, you love me. The reason you forgive me isn't because you think I'm worth being put, that my shit is worth being put up with. You just love me. And
Mm.
that was a lovely moment. The very first time I really like felt that. It was harder for me to commit back the same way. It took a while before I felt my same love for them, but that also grew. And there's truly a wonderful feeling when you realize you both love each other. When you love when like somebody, you feel somebody's love or you feel some love for somebody, you feel all that fuzzy feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had just like not experienced that, I think, until late 2023, early
Mm.
2024.
Mm.
Um, and it caught me off guard. I'm like, wait, what this is what love feels like? What? Love has a feeling? Which is the silliest sentence ever. Like, of course it does. It's a feeling. Love has a feeling. And hmm, already missing my cat thinking about that. I love her so much. She's my little girl.
Yeah, I wonder whether like your ability for empathy, like for effective or emotional empathy, is also connected to that. You said like you need to be in a good state of mind and like perhaps look at someone you care deeply about and then focus your attention just right, and then you can experience it sometimes. And so I was wondering like whether you have like instructions for how to actually get there for people who've never experienced emotional empathy.
Um, yeah, it's a three-step process. Number one, you gotta understand mirroring. You have to understand their happiness for you is their own happiness just because they like you being happy. And you didn't make them do it. They saw the smile on your face and they're just happy for you because they like your happiness too. So you need to that does that. It also reinforces that your emotions are separate, which is the base thing of empathy. And then you need to be able to be kind of in the moment in a positive way, trying to enjoy things. And or if you're trying to comfort somebody, you know, be in the moment and allow yourself to experience whatever. If you're trying to help somebody, maybe understanding their negative feelings will help you help them better. Be open to it because maybe you've gone through the same sort of just insane bullshit struggle and it'd be nice to not feel alone. And it's that the second step is like mindfulness to allow the feelings to happen in the first place. And then what I try to do is I try to if you can get that far, as they're telling me what's going on, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes instead of just imagine it, because that's different than imagining it from my perspective. Try to imagine it from their perspective as they're telling you things. Let it paint a picture in your mind and it not have immediate reference to what you understand about yourself. Just trust that you can understand what a person means with what they say and imagine that it's them. And if that connects with something you can emotionally vibe with, odds are you have good chances of feeling something. Um, I remember one of my most recent moments when I was just struck by it was with my housemate, Rowan, and they were telling me something they went through, and I actually felt bad for them. And that's the rarest one for sure. And so, yeah, it really struck me. It wasn't like super strong. It was just like, like I can't believe you had to go through that.
I suppose I should add for the viewers that we've been like thinking about creating a recovery handbook for narcissistic personality disorder. So that's the context of the handbook. Uh,
Yeah, there's not a got lot of good literature around it for the person trying to do it. And I think that's very important for somebody with NPD because odds are they're going to want um to do it
yeah.
themselves. Uh Even if they're with a therapist, they want it to be their own fucking handiwork. They want to own it.
Mm.
They want the sense of pride, whatever. They want to be the person to do it. They want to be where the buck stops.
Yeah, like I don't know to what extent you can put yourself into the mindset of someone with like standard NPD, let's say, but to have like a few like so one thing that is very confusing to me are like all the different reasons that make it difficult for people with NPD of like different brands to do like for example the like relationship repair after like some kind of rupture happened, then to figure out with the other person what happened, apologize often to each other, and figure out how to do it better next time. And like one way, of course, in which it can go wrong is if the person just has too much shame and so cannot clearly think about what happened, needs to like repress the memories of what happened, and then that interferes and can't like acknowledge any kind of responsibility in the situation. But then there are like so many other reasons as well, like the fear of like giving up some control, and yeah, so like that is for for one, like how many, and probably also kind of some kind of resentment that perhaps they resent being asked to do something for someone else that they have not been given in their like childhood, for example. That could also factor into it, and I imagine there are probably like other reasons as well, and then there's also like an interesting counterphobic aspect to it, often where if someone feels a lot of shame, for example, if that's the that's the reason that it's difficult, then has like this rupture and like refuses to repair it because they cannot face their responsibility in what happened. Sorry. Then what I often see happening afterwards is that they like I don't know, take a bunch of selfies and post a bunch of selfies online, or like seek contact with the other person whilst pretending that the thing never happened that happened, and like sort of where I would like intuitively just hide and try not to be seen by anyone due to shame, they like expose themselves intentionally as if like they kind of know on some level that they want to use that situation to grow and to learn how to handle it better, but don't know how in a way. Yeah,
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. Like when you're operate, I'll start with that, and then I'm
yeah.
gonna speak directly to my NP dork and NP demon crowd. Um, But in a situation like that, when you're working on such when you still are at a very surface level, they're basically bolstering themselves with supply, right? They're getting the positive strengthening self-esteem feelings from somewhere. And you gave a vanity example with selfies. And then it also helps to distract, and that's avoidant, and you can see how that's very NPD. Um, I mean, like, I'm totally not against doing that just to lift your mood. Um,
Yeah.
I've like, if like I've had some hookups and I happen to take some more nude selfies of myself, and then I'm in a bad mood. Somebody that I know to some depth that also appreciates my body, I'll go, hey, want to see my tits?
Yeah.
And um, that'll be great. And then I get it's really positive. I get to lay some positivity back into them. They're normally somebody I would like to appreciate my body. But let me try and speak directly to my brothers, sisters, and other NP dork siblings. If it's something that's more painful, just being vulnerable or or facing a difficult um thing you kind of got to own up to, or facing a difficult conflict. Think of think of the awesome partner or the awesome head of household, that one that can keep it in their head straight, or the one that is think of the one that is bigger than the setbacks. Maybe you'll cry, but that's because you're better than denying that from yourself and from everybody. Everybody else, they just pass it off and it's easy. They just say, don't worry, it's okay, it'll never happen again. And just imagine yourself not held together perfectly, but holding yourself up and being that head of household, that caregiver, that partner, that girlfriend, that boyfriend, that husband, that wife, that friend, that through those difficult things, inside and outside, stuck it through like nobody else. And you know that that person that matters to you would see that. And you know you see that when you see that in somebody else. That's what you wish you had. You know they'll see it.
How forgiving people usually are. I have always been like too avoidant and internalizing to like have tested out how forgiving people are. So I don't really know, and would be like interesting to sort of get an overview of like how forgiveness works for most people that we actually want to have among our friends.
Well, I think that's complicated in a number of ways. One of them's me, one of them's everybody. Because like when you're first starting out in recovery, you might not have the healthiest relationships. So let's say
Hmm.
someone with NPD is friends with somebody with BPD or NPD. No,
Hmm.
that other person might not be that forgiving. My friend Leon and I have traded back and forth on this. As we've hit developmental milestones and we came back. I'm fortunate for that. But it doesn't mean that that's a guaranteed at all. That might be someone you now never see again because you hit a deep trauma trigger. But as you get healthier and you have people that matter more to you and you matter more to them, typically the accountability lends people to be more forgiving because it's difficult to understate the power and value of accountability. You really don't see a lot of it in this world. And then the people that really get to know someone with MPD, like point blank, seeing a narcissist be like really accountable is can be like a thing of awe. Just like that's the stereotypical person that avoids accountability at any and every and all cost, at anybody else's cost. And here they are doing it anyway. And even if it's not impressive to that, like my friend Leon, it can impress him sometimes, but he's he A knows what the actual difficulty of the struggle is, also having a cluster B personality disorder, and it's also important to him that we are allowed accountability because like how could you be man, I remember one of our heartfelt talks before I had to leave Michigan for a while, and he's like, these people that see you as a demon, Tiffany, how does that motivate you to be accountable? Isn't that something you want to support in the world? That somebody is actually doing it, you know? So I think that changes over time with the kind of people you get close to as you heal. And the kind of people you keep around as you heal. But from another thing where it complicates it for me is we've talked about the psychopath thing of like over apologizing. So I will instead talk about that in the vein of like I have gotten away with so much shit with people and jobs over time. Um, Either like deliberately, semi-deliberately, negligently, or passively taken advantage of people's forgiveness. People can be almost shockingly forgiving. It's not a guarantee at all, but people can be almost shockingly forgiving, at least at least from my perspective. And knowing when I know that, it gives me the confidence to face it instead of craft another lie because that's a better future that I would want to build towards. That at least the reasonable chances there. Like I'll have trouble having faith that that it'll pan out. I'll have trouble having faith that the person really will be forgiving, but if I can really talk myself into it, I will realize it's just worth the chance. Um, no, but genuinely, people can be shockingly forgiving because people do actually often want to see the best in somebody, especially if you have any sort of pleasant personality. They don't want to see you go for no reason if you're like a fun or a nice person. A lot of people are like nice, but they're boring, and um, that's why people often put up with assholes because they're at least interesting. Because genuinely, for not everybody, but a lot of people, an interesting asshole, at least in regulated doses, is way better than the same boring person who never does anything wrong every day. Because people don't generally expect people to never do anything wrong either. People are honest with themselves enough to know that they do wrong as well. Just by mistake, by impulse, by that there's no way to predict how you how what you do might hurt somebody unintentionally. Um, so maybe on your journey, Dawn, I wouldn't say test the limits, but I would say you could be confident enough to test the limits. And that, and if you can do that and if that's reasonably true, I would say as a form of radical authenticity and radical accountability and just like deliberate the buck stops here kind of being that accountable person, that self-respect of like, no, I'm not just going to pretend these things under the bus because that's the weak and easy thing. Just, I would encourage you to experiment with that. You could definitely take people's forgiveness too far more easily than you would think. So if you're not doing that, you're probably fine.
What is your experience with like providing closure? Like, I know some people who seek closure. I'm guessing that has something to do with identity diffusion. There are some people who seem to be quite indifferent to it, and some people who are like, no, I never want to talk to this person again for no, no matter for what reason. And I never know which person I'm dealing with until I ask them. So I also don't know how to provide closure, like especially after the fact when I'm not speaking to them anymore.
Um, it can go a variety of ways. Some people make that very clear to me. I've definitely lived through
Mm,
too many people who definitely never want anything to do with me again. They
mhm,
make it clear I've hurt them too
mhm,
deeply. Um, one weird experience with it was a girl I dated for a year on and off. She had had man, this weighs on me heavily.
mhm,
She had had a happy relationship and been married for a while by the time she found me on Facebook again and asked me to help her find closure to feelings from then. I had damaged her self-esteem so deeply that like finding safety and happiness in life was not enough.
mhm, mhm,
Man. And it's never quite happened like that before since. Um some people I treated as just reconnecting with them and seeing how it goes. And some of those people then blocked me and never talked to me again. Um, my closure to myself is just what else can I do? Um, I'm already doing all the things that add up to being the person I wasn't at the time that I wish I had been. I can't go back and change that. And why would I want to make what they lived through meaningless and not 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 improve myself? And that's about all the closure I can get sometimes. Um, with somebody with some I can hope they're happier without me. I'm thinking of one person, of one ex-girlfriend in particular. She probably is happier without me. And that sucks in a way, but I'm happier now than I was then too. So that is an improvement in the world. And um still hurts to know someone is probably happier without you.
mhm,
But I'm not really the same person I was then, so um I should remind myself not to directly compare myself with who I was then. If I met
mhm.
them now, would it really would be different. Um And not to hang on that of what could never be, but just like
Mm.
I learned the lessons I needed to. Closure for stuff like this is incredibly tough. Like before I found out Leon had changed his appraisal of what happened through another friend, it was just like my closure was I hope he learns better for himself. I brought it as far as I could. I didn't just let it happen. And so, I really only like cut things off when like it was tearing my life down. And not only was I tearing my life down, but all the things I tried to
Mm.
keep things going forward just ultimately were tearing me down more. And I didn't at the time cut him out of my life. Um, like maliciously or anything, or even with anything less have giving it my having given it my best. And then
Mm.
not to discount the like, well, I stuck around because I would have rathered it just work out. And so why else would I like what else would I have done? Left sooner and been sad that I didn't try hard enough?
Mhm.
You know, closure for this kind of stuff is really tough. If we get to the inabsolutionism question, I'll expand upon that.
Please tell the viewers about inabsolutionism.
So inabsolutionism is my like personal life philosophy. It is in my mind my evolution of absurdism. And so absolution is this like you do something that sets everything straight, that
Mm.
frees you from the weight of the things you've done and the guilt and stuff. It's been reversed, made up for, paid off. And some of that in that part of that is closure, right? Wanting it to all tie together neatly. And some of it is also a direct attack on nihilism itself and the point of view, the mindset that leads you to try to iterate nihilism into absurdism. And in both of those, the people that dreamt up nihilism are like, well, if I die one day, what's the point? And really, they're trying to, and then the absurdists are going, well, you know, I'm gonna try and find a point anyway. Who cares? And it really they don't realize it, but they're struggling with the fear of death, the fear of it not meaning anything, etc. They're struggling with these existential dreads. And something that would be an absolution would free them from it. But they're not really facing it. They're
Mm.
deflecting it, right? They're living with the dread as opposed to either like accepting it or embracing it or turning it on its head. And I feel like I can turn it on its head. The other core part of the point of view that I don't like about them is that their meanings are they make meaning explicit instead of implicit. And that it's like nihilism makes it clear where it's like it speaks of meaning as being explicitly about what happens after your death that propagates on, or if anything feels meaningful enough before then to really count, etc. And
Mm.
I genuinely think that's all bullshit, and it's all up to things that aren't you. And I don't think any of that is necessary. It's a major overcomplication. I came upon this way of thinking. I got the seed to it when I was contemplating the ineffable awe I would feel looking into a beautiful, clear, starry night. And I realized we are the ones who named those stars, that if I wasn't there, if I was dead or never born, I would not be feeling that. And so that magical feeling is really within me. If we weren't here and we did not name the stars, they would just continue on being their gravity-powered thermonuclear incandescent in vaguely spheroid engines of physics, devoid of meaning, right? And there'd be nothing wrong with that, or nothing right. There'd be nothing. It wouldn't matter. They're just stars, but they mean something to us. And so let's say when we name a star and we name a constellation, it already had some meaning within us, and we made a name for it to give a name to that meaning. And so it is, to me, as simple as if something means something to you, if someone means something to you, it means something and it means that thing to you. That's it. We are the seed of meaning. And that is my tautology of how we are ontological. We're arguing over where meaning starts, but I think meaning is not entirely irrational, but it has an ultimately irrational basis. Like,
Mm.
why do you do the thing? 'Cause you like it. You can go really deep into, let's say, like, why I like cars. I like cars in four different dimensions. I like it. I like driving them fast, as much for the adrenaline as much for the skill it takes, and the latter is an intellectual thrill. The former, you could see the adrenaline comes from a different part of evolution, like hunting, um, the immediate satisfaction of fixing it, the community, etc. And what I figure out at the end of that is that I like cars.
Yeah.
And it's not that all that intellectual pursuit of understanding it is meaningless
Mm.
either. It's just meaningful in a different way. It's another part of it. And that we should not make the initial meaning of just like, I like cars. Um, uh, Hinge upon whether it ultimately makes sense or fits into some framework. And so within this amalgamation of ideas I've put forth, um, I then invite somebody, instead of to think of a life like a book, to think of life like a diary or a journal of somebody you love, or a found footage. Because unlike a book, we don't have neat covers. Even the first starting page where we start, we didn't write that. Our parents did. And you have no idea when that last page is going to be and if it's going to tie up nicely. We cannot define our front cover. We have no idea where the rear cover is going to end. Life is so fucking messy,
Mm.
and we should not bound ourselves by feeling a necessity to make it all make sense.
Yeah.
To try and find that absolution where it all falls apart, where all the difficult parts fall away and it all falls into place. And instead, like I said before, where we should have a healthy relationship with work, with labor, you know, finds meaning in the difficult things as somebody who rarely feels guilt or shame. I realize the weight of guilt, you know, the weight of negative feelings of loss. Because, let's say, with my cat dog passing, he's my best friend. He's the most important person in my life for the
Mm.
longest time. And I can't decide when his passing would happen. But that didn't make a single minute of a single day of those 15 years less meaningful.
Yeah.
It doesn't end cleanly. It doesn't matter. And you get to decide what you do with that meaning. And I have. Um, and so instead to give it implicit meaning, it all implicitly already has meaning. And you can describe it if you want, but the things you do them because they matter to you. You do them because they matter to somebody else. They already mean something, and to not ever predicate that on anything, you don't need to.
Mm.
Just unnecessary. And like I said, so then embrace the negative. Embrace the weight that it gives the positive. Embrace what you have to go through to get to the positive. Embrace the trudgery and say, yeah, but I got through it. Because the real part of that story that matters there is the person that lives through it, the person that tells it. It's not, and that's where the implicit meaning comes from. Um, it's not only meaningful because you got through it, but it is meaningful to you that you got through it. And thus we can let go of our of seeking absolution and embrace life in its positives and its negatives and its
Mm.
neutrals and its unclassifieds. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I love it. Like in particular, also the let's call it messiness or something of a life without absolution is something that allows me to relate to so many people. Like, I think if I didn't have any messiness, or if I were to repress any kind of messiness, then that would just block me from relating to most people or all people. Probably just make me feel isolated.
Yeah, I saw absolution my whole life. And I think I could call it a number of other things, but it fits enough a part of the philosophy and it sounds strong, impactful, and badass. I think that's a good, like, you could have called it, instead of saying um absurdism, you could have called it embrace the cosmic joke. You could have called it something else and it would still mean the same thing, and it could attach the words
Mm.
can attach to it and get meaning assigned to them the same way. Um, One other thing I wanted to note is that it's more self-oriented. Like I said, that nihilism predicates itself upon, the meaning of your life after you're gone or to other people, instead of orienting it to yourself and to
Mm.
each individual person's self and the meaning they already live, embody, and hold, even if they recognize, acknowledge it, embrace it,
Yeah.
understand it, or not. So it's hard for me to see shame as I can see guilt as healthy, but
Mm.
it's hard for me to see shame as healthy because shame to me just sounds like
Legacy
you're
code.
what?
The old legacy code that like hasn't been removed yet.
Yeah, like because guilt can at least like reflect either your values or just the harm done to somebody. That
Mhm.
makes all the sense in the world. Shame just seems like an overpowered,
Yeah.
unnecessary extra version of guilt.
Yeah, exactly. And so much like childhood trauma is due to like different forms of like conditioning through shame and like I think which could just get rid of it. Like at before birth, like intervene a bit in the genetic code and then remove the shame. That would probably prevent a lot of bad things without enabling the same amount of bad things.
Yeah, I think if everyone still had guilt, but nobody had shame,
Yeah.
we would probably live in a better world. Because then an asshole can't shame you for something completely illogical, right? They'd have to not just make you feel like this is why shame feels stupid. The person is making you feel bad. You know, if you punch me in the face, it makes me feel bad. But why is punching me in the face gonna make me think that that's my
Yeah.
fault on its own, in and of itself? Maybe they
Mm,
could, but it won't in and of itself. But shame has the power to do that. And so I feel like shame gives disproportionate power to assholes to
hmm.
just make you feel bad until you believe something that's wrong. Whereas guilt, healthy guilt is just like a lesson. You know, once you learn your lesson, the guilt can float away.
But you
Like,
mentioned I surrender control to regain agency. Do you remember that? I
yeah,
don't know
yeah.
what you meant by that.
So I believe that's really the paradox of control itself. Um, the more you try, the more you have a control mindset, the more you're bound to specific outcomes or following
Mm,
um and it makes you more rigid. And so surrendering allows you more options
yeah, different way of doing that.
because you're accepting that maybe you will do something that actually does matter, but you can't have a control mindset to see those other options and it actually gives
Mm,
agency back. Um I think the concept of control um is broadly but not entirely very paradoxical.
mm. Yeah, I see this a lot in our groups with people who are like very deep in the control mindset. They frame it as a kind of power, but when I empathize with like, do I want to be like that? Then I feel mostly the inflexibility of it, and I'm like, yeah, I want to be like that 0.1% of the time. I would like to have the option, let's say, but just
Yeah.
not.
Or like that if it would work out in their head like that, in your head like that, it would feel great, right? But it's not real. It's not
Mm,
really what happens. And the other flip side to that is people are more likely to do what you want if your primary thing isn't trying to control them.
mm. Yeah.
And then part of that's also surrender because then accepting compromise and getting 50% of what you want is better than 0%. So finding a common ground
Mm,
and leaning them towards something that's more like what you like, but not entirely because you're also accepting what they like.
mm,
Um, Still will likely net gain you, you know?
mm. Yeah, that's also like a nice mechanism that sort of aligns incentives. And people just use their empathy to care about each other, then you can turn any kind of gain into like a mutual positive sum kind of Pareto improvement of the situation.
I think it's still more complex than that because I think there's times where that doesn't work out in a practical sense, but at least in the immediate moment,
Hmm.
helping people with their feelings at least gets you past the whatever's blocking actually moving forward. Um, because sometimes even after, like, an extreme example, right? Like, let's say you have you and me and another friend of ours, and you two are the normal ones, and I got mad at something and I really don't want to compromise. And initially, like, helping me feel better is probably going to lead me back towards the mindset of where I would compromise. You know, um, I want it to be just like, imagine you, another person, and a narcissist are at a table. I don't know, the narcissist might end up compromising with you, but not while they're still fucking pissed. But I think that breeds true, you know, I think that extreme example still breeds true for a lot of less extreme examples.
Mm. Yeah, but I
Um,
think like also when you have a situation like that where someone resists some kind of compromise, oftentimes the framings of the situation are different. Like the party that like seeks the compromise is probably in a collaboration framing where they are trying to achieve something together with the other person, and the person who resists it is sort of in a blame mindset where they're trying to figure out like who's right and who's wrong, so who has to take the blame for whatever happens. And then like breaking the person out of the right wrong mindset and getting them into the collaboration mindset again makes it only like possible to negotiate fairly afterwards, not because it would have been like unfair before, but because negotiation was just not on the table.
yeah, absolutely. I can think of like gentler and rougher versions of that. Like, let's say somebody's not going to get really into a compromising mindset. I'd be like, look, if you really want to blame somebody, we can frickin' blame somebody. And this problem is still going to be here, and you can live with that, and I can't, and I don't care, and I'm going to solve it. So if you want to do it that way, we're gonna get through this, and we're gonna solve the problem, and we're also gonna find the person to blame since you want it so bad.
Yeah.
That's I don't know why my mind leans me towards the like, how do I out coerce the coercive person? But
Yeah, I
um, but
had
it
this idea. Mm.
but it could also be, I don't know, it's just a fantasy. I'd love to do that. But I I could imagine a more middle ground, that somebody just doesn't yet understand that kind of value, and really um you have to feel it, help them feel like people are going to be accountable. We're going to make a solution that has you in mind too, etc. And then just like kind of doing the compromise and negotiation, even though they're uncomfortable with it, but now that they're at least not stonewalling it.
Mm.
And it's interesting how broad the spectrum is there, um, to me.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah, like this worked really well for me. I think it's closest to the first version that you mentioned. It worked really well for me at one point. There was a project, one person wanted to drop out, project was kind of failing, and so um, I noticed that the person was like really dead set on like blaming me for the failure, and didn't see the point in that. But then again, like taking the blame for that toward that person just didn't seem to have any negative effects that I could think of. So I was I was like,
I would
okay, let's
love
make
that.
this deal. Like,
I would get off on that. It's like, fine, if you want me to be the asshole, I will. You
yeah,
know, if
exactly.
that's really what you want, I'll give that to you, buddy. I'm the biggest cunt on earth. I'm glad you finally recognized it. Let's move on.
Yeah, exactly. That was my
If you
mindset,
want
basically.
if you want me to be the demon, I love that shit. It makes me feel powerful because I'm I'm letting myself be like um bad. I'm letting I'm like being stronger than my reputation or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And this person thinks they're so in control, and it's just like, all I had to do was lie to your face, you dumb bitch. And you were gonna go along with it anyway, and you think you played us.
Exactly.
I love that shit. That's that Laura once said it. She called it Duper's delight.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that there's positive. I love that there's positive versions of it. That there's
Yeah, I
I should remind myself of that there are like very positive ways of out assholing an asshole and it being um genuinely helpful and productive. And
mm,
that kind of having that asshole in your heart helps you do it.
mm.
Hopefully wistful. And I think that's like how I feel about my whole recovery. Like it still feels really daunting, but I really don't have any real reason to doubt that I'm going to get somewhere I want to be, whether I know what that is. Um,
Yeah, what could that look like?
what do you what do you think what it could look like?
Yeah, like what are these places that you want to get to?
Shorter term, it's hard to answer. It's easier for me to answer the longer term. Um, I'll start with there.
Hmm.
I want I want to really feel my whimsy again. I still like I feel compelled to do it, but I still feel like I'm going through the motions in my playfulness and my whimsy and stuff. I really when I light up somebody's face from something I've done, especially something from some aspect of myself I've nurtured that I do it in my own unique way, or I do it in a way that most people don't know how, whether it be just for entertainment or helping somebody through something. I want I want to feel that again. Feel the person's like feel the person light up through their face. And I have a strange, unknowable sense that's gonna happen and is possible, but I have no idea how long that's going to take. I can just tell I'm doing so much good. I only like feel like the victory of it and not like
Mm.
the delight. I want I want to feel more deeply what I am in people's lives so
Mhm.
that I can feel like I'm not even belonging. I can tell I belong, but I want to feel like I'm somewhere, something, and someone more than just know it.
I associate that with meta meditation. Like for me, when I feel this connection with another person that I actually talk to, then it's an amazing feeling. Like exactly, exactly as amazing as you think it is. And but like I get something very similar from meta meditation.
What's meta meditation?
Like it's when you try to feel like love in general, sort of a training for feeling more love. And you train that by like first starting out easy, tr having like feeling love towards someone you actually already love, like Farewell, for example, and then expanding it from there either to yourself and feeling like self-love or to another person that's more difficult to love, and then you try to like really understand where this person is coming from. And like for me the trick is also to understand how I am like that person. So like it's easy for me to feel love for myself and for people who are sufficiently like me, people like who are friends and close to me, but then to expand that to people who are unlike me, I need to know like how would I have become that person? So, what genes would have to have been different? What temperaments, what like childhood experiences would have to have been different for me to have turned into that person? And once I can like close that gap, I feel like I'm that person, but for a few little tweaks here and there throughout our lives, then it becomes really possible for me to like merge or like to expand sort of my identity to include the other person.
You
And
can feel that?
yeah, it's amazing. Like there was,
I've had two shocked faces in this span because the first one was me realizing like why would I want to feel the love I have for Farvel for somebody else? And I realized very succinctly I am selfish with my love and I need to ponder that. That is a hell of a realization and
you have plenty of it. You can give it freely.
it's I
I love people I would never want to meet.
I that's an I'm just delighting at the novelty of that phrase. That's astonishing. I'd have never come up with that phrase on my own, I don't think. Because I hope this would maybe even be a pathway towards this, but like sorry, it's so meta to me still. It's already like a complicated thing in my head to put myself in somebody's shoes. So it's challenging like when I have those moments of spontaneous affective empathy, that is what happens. It's very my brain's not very good at it yet. And I would like that to be more natural, even if not constant.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like that's like a stepping stone from where I'm at to where you're at. And I don't know that it has to happen linearly, but at least I know the shape of the lacking, or the shape of the yet to be, or the shape of the incompleteness, whatever. I don't want
Hmm.
to assume the pathway or method. I'm a little. Is that what they call self-transcendence?
I think so. So, like, I told someone about this, a friend of mine, and she was like, "Oh, that is self-transcendence," or like she described it with that term. With that term, um, probably.
I've never understood what it is.
uh I just described it
And
to.
now
Uh,
I know, and now I understand
I just yeah.
what it is.
Uh-huh. Like I just described that to a friend yesterday. How like identification works for me, like that I sort of course, highly identify with like
Did
this
you?
body and algorithms that are sort of like it. They're very much like it. I suppose like one partner of mine is sufficiently similar that like she's also like a sufficiently similar algorithm that there's a lot of identification going on. But then I think sort of in general, humans are like also like a high level of identification because a lot of them are fairly similar. then like all mammals, I think, are also like very similar to me. So there's also still like a high level of identification. Then like all animals that share culture, like I think culture, having like sort of a pack and then having some shared culture within the pack, I think that is also something that makes it easier for me to feel a high level of identification with the animal. And then like all sorts of animals that don't have that, like most invertebrates, and that's sort of where it gets like a bit more difficult with the identification, where I feel like I don't really understand what it is like to be that animal. Like, of course, the level to which I understand what it is like to be some non-human mammal pack animal is also relatively low, but it like drops off pretty steeply after that for animals that don't have a culture. And
I understand it. I don't know if I can do it, but I get it. Because I do that with Farvel.
mhm,
Because when she just jumps up into my hand, or she rubs into my face, or when she was like snuggling with me, like laying on my feet, and then I watched her fall asleep and her head just like fall off my foot. And then she woke up with the strongest trill of like, oh my God, I have mommy. And I just want to feel that because I'm like, that has to feel so wonderful. And I can put myself in her shoes, in her
yeah,
little paws. And that, I get why a person would do that now.
mhm,
Never understood. I've never understood what it is or why. But that also unlocked a realization of why a small self works the way it does.
mhm,
Real simple. If you don't have much of a self container at all, you know, doing the process you're talking about doesn't grow empathy. It just like starts replacing the self you have. And that's the psychopathic mirroring thing,
mhm,
you know, where like if I go to emulate somebody and I try to take on parts of them, um, if they're with a tenuous self-container or suppressed one, then I become those thought patterns. So that's
mhm.
why a psychopath would have defenses against empathy because it wipes your slate. That's really interesting.
The final question is like, what tips you would like to share with other people who want to recover from sovereignism?
The first part I want to express is my opinion that recovery from any cluster B personality disorder is broadly a challenge and struggle of self-acceptance. Because all of our adaptations are there just because we weren't just allowed to just do and be ourselves. And and I think that's just important to never forget because I think anybody else with sovereignism can vibe with we would like to be our most awesome, most self possible. And that was taken from us in a way. But we have all the capacity in the world to find it and get it anyway and undo or reverse or defy the cards we were dealt and just go to a different table and get another hand dealt. Play the chances again, but on our terms this time. I want to share something from my friend, whom I used to date, that the phrase, people are hell, but they're also heaven. I think that I think that's a good enough reason to at least investigate what's good and bad in ourselves and in other people and worth chasing down. Something a little more vulnerable. Comes back to the first thing I said. To be your most powerful self would be to overcome the hand you were dealt. And this world has a lot of cruelty and unfairness with it. And someone like me, someone like us with sovereignism would most likely really understand that since we're adept at dealing with it.
Mm.
And in a world so cruel, we should not deny ourselves from the help of those we see as worthy or those that see us as worthy. There's no weakness in having help facing the hardest things within us and outside of us in such a cruel, often cruel and unfair world. And if anything, we need all the advantage we can get, and we deserve any of it. Maybe more finer points. You might not be a spiritual person, I'm not, but mindfulness doesn't have to be about Buddhism or Zen. It's just learning harmony in your mind, learning to control the chaos in your brain, learning to quiet it when you want it, learning to be at peace and enjoy that fucking rest after all the bullshit you go through in a day or all the shit you've had to do to get where you are or want to be. It's all of those things. And so rest is important because getting there is tiring no matter what. And that's okay. Doesn't mean we're not going to get up and do it again once we're done resting. You probably have a complicated relationship with your parents. It's possible you hate them both. I truly hate my mother. I love my father, but I'm glad he's dead. He gave me hell, but he did his best to give me what he could. He was a troubled individual like mine. And it makes sense that navigating that might be complicated because maybe the one parent you do love gave you just as much bad as good, even though that bad was atrocious. And you're doing yourself a disservice to throw out the good as well. You don't have to respect them for it, but respect yourself enough to to unweave that. Own your evil. Own your capacity to dispense cruelty. There are times when it might be necessary. If you're knocking down that asshole in your life or the life of somebody you care about or an ally, there's no shame in taking joy in it. It would help you to do it in measure, but it's a good motivating factor. It definitely take the light and the opportunity. And don't let anybody else tell you otherwise, and you don't have to hide that from the rest of yourself that's striving to do better or more. If you hide it from yourself, it'll sneak up on you.
Mm.
Instead, own it. Above even other people, try to learn to trust yourself. But reteach yourself trust as a commitment, not as a command to yourself. You're committed to that you'll do better tomorrow, that trust is not all or nothing, that you will trust yourself to learn, not trust yourself to never fail. And you have the choice of what and how you trust yourself and others. And that was just simply a complicated thing for me to learn. It wasn't obvious. And I wanted to give that very hard to figure out answer back. Finally, a subtler thing. You don't have to be like the rest of the people they call narcissists. That's okay. You always will be a little different even from the weirdos. And That's okay. They're different from you because this inflated term of narcissist, even if you don't get torn down by how society demonizes that word to the point where maybe we need a new word, like we're doing with sovereignism instead of malignant narcissism, even if it doesn't tear you down, don't mistake what people call narcissism for the magnificent complexity within you. One last thing. All my beautiful narcissistic psychopaths, all the people with sovereignism, I believe in you and I don't care what you think about that. If you really think you know better, is that how you want to prove me wrong? Do you want to give me that power? I don't want it. I don't care. But I think you do. And I think you want to prove yourself right. Good luck.